Welcome to our Parent Helpers online program. My name is Carrie Rowe. I'm the Assistant Principal of Mountain Eve Regional Primary School. Thank you so much for taking the time to complete this program. It just really helps us to create a fabulous homeschool partnership at Mountain Eve. As I mentioned, homeschool partnerships are vitally important as they do create opportunities for the development of shared understanding of how children learn, and the children will also have that same message at home and at school so that those experiences can be brought together. This is really important, particularly in that early literacy and numeracy development time. So some of the approaches that might have been how we learnt in the past may not necessarily be what's happening in classrooms today. So this online program helps to give a shared understanding of what it looks like now. So what does being a classroom helper mean? So under the direction of the classroom teacher, you may assist with working in small groups with children, or you might be providing a role model of what learning looks like. Most importantly, you are becoming an integral part of our school community, and therefore your support will ensure that children can remain on task while the teacher's working with other groups, and also with your willingness to help in classroom activities. It shows other parents in our community what can be achieved when strong partnerships are formed. So this slide says, don't worry, be happy. I know for many of our starting families in prep that there's this concern about what happens at the beginning of the year and finding that the children are settling in, which is certainly really important. But term one, we do spend a lot of time getting to know the children. We do find out what works. We do help to try and get them be very independent and develop some resilience about particularly making mistakes and having to sort these sorts of mistakes out themselves. So as a parent helper, we do really see it as a helper, as a support, as a supporter, rather than somebody that is doing things for the children. Levelled books, just a comment around levelled books. I know that when children bring home their take-home books, that we can often have a look at what's on the back of the book and determine the level, but we really want to develop a love of reading. So whilst the levels are important for home reading, it's more about guidance for the teacher, that they're sending home things that children can read independently. Parent helpers' job, or your job listening to reading, is really about listening to reading. It's not about teaching them how to read. That's what school is for. So the more comfortable they are with those books at home and the more independent they are with them, the better. Just a note on the catastrophe scale and how that works at school is we, at the beginning of the year, really start to get children to identify what in their world is a catastrophe and maybe what is something that we could work through and develop strategies to work through and sort through independently or with others. So examples of this might be, falling over in the yard, and whether this is a 10 on our catastrophe scale or whether it's a 2 or a 3 because maybe we've just got a scraped knee or something like that. Mutual trust is really important between families and teachers, so that we can really do the best for your child and for your children. Also a little bit about the Mountain Eve narrative and where we are curriculum-wise. So obviously there is the national curriculum, which you may be aware of. The education state, which Victoria is known by with the current government, means that we have a Victorian curriculum. This is largely the national curriculum because Victoria have contributed a lot to the curriculum development. However, it is not the national curriculum, it is as the Victorian curriculum. It is a bit more of a specific approach, and there's a lot in the Victorian curriculum that may be neglected in the national curriculum. We also have our Mountain Eve instructional model, and this is around the research into best practice, and it includes what we call the gradual release of responsibility, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. And also we do focus on the visible learning. So what is the learning today, and linking what we learn and our independent practice to what is really visible around what we're learning and how to be successful. We focus on a growth mindset, the power of yet. I can't do this yet, but with practice and persistence I can. Critical and creative thinking, and really looking at lots of solutions. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to be creative in our artistic work, but creative in coming up with solutions, and we can build on each other's ideas. Early intervention, we do have a school-funded speech pathologist, and we do intervention in our grade 1 area, particularly for those that are needing support to reach a minimum benchmarks, and we really focus on doing our intervention properly so that sets the children up. And that's our narrative. So I know this looks really interesting around a book entitled The Spoon-Fed Generation and How to Raise Independent Children. Michael Gross is an expert and provides lots of tips for parenting around resilience and independence. And if you go to the website parentingideas.com.au, there's some other resources and presentations that you might be able to access if you're looking for further information on this topic. So starting to think about learning, obviously learning a foreign language can be extremely difficult. Here's some different examples of different languages, as you can see. If you have a look at the top left-hand corner, that looks like something that would be fairly simple to understand just because you can make a connection to your own language. You've got some background knowledge around that, so you can use some strategies with English to work out that says welcome tourists, we speak English, even though the spelling is not the same as what we would be using in English. But once you get over to the right-hand image where it talks about the coffee, you've got some other images there and different symbols that are representing things that are maybe not so common. So what other strategies can you use? And generally you're going to use some of those links to what you've already got. For example, if you have a look at the milk coffee and then the tasteless coffee and the strong coffee, you can see the last two symbols of each of those are the same, which makes you assume that that is probably coffee. And then the strength, you can see maybe it's got to do with one of those other symbols. You can start to make some connections. There's some symbols that are in the tasteless as well as strong, that second symbol there. So wondering what that means, whether it is the strength and therefore you're talking about no strength, and high strength is the symbol in front of it. So you start to make connections, and then you're sort of at that point where you've got your language plus which is your spoken language, plus some random symbols. But luckily it does tell us that we've got free toilet paper, please cherish the use there. And then sometimes you can get right over to the right side there where you've got no scaffold at all and you've got to work out just from the images what's going on. But the importance of those images in helping you learn what that might say if you've got no connection to the symbols. So I want you to have a little think about how you learn maybe a foreign language, or maybe it could be something new you learned recently. What language did you learn? What were the reasons for the learning? What helped you? What hindered your learning? Just have a pause this video and have a little think about those elements before moving on. Hopefully some of the things that popped up for you around what you are hoping to learn, or when you learn, what you notice about what you do as a learner, is that when we learn, we need to know what the reason is for the learning, and that's why we talk about our learning intentions in the classroom. It's really important for children to know what their learning is, but that you're actively involved rather than all the other children doing the work, that everyone does this together. There's lots of models and demonstrations by others. You've got all the tools and resources you need. There's lots of opportunity for repetition and reinforcement. There's time to practice, and also that your efforts are being recognised. So that gives you all the information to answer that first question. So hopefully you can work through that before moving to the next video.